All characters, situations, and events in this story are entirely fictional. Any resemblance to real persons, organizations, or actual events is purely coincidental. This content is created for entertainment purposes only and does not encourage any negative or harmful behavior.
The sentence didn't come out loud. It barely existed, slurred, unfinished, almost swallowed by sleep. But Nathan heard it, and once you hear something like that, you can never unhear it. The rain started just after midnight. Chicago had a way of turning quiet when it rained, like the city itself was holding its breath. Streetlights blurred into long streaks of gold against the wet pavement, and the distant hum of traffic softened into something almost comforting. Nathan Cole stood by the window of their high-rise apartment, watching droplets race each other down the glass. His reflection stared back at him, tie loosened, sleeves rolled, a man who looked tired but composed. He checked his watch. 12:47 a.m. Emily was late. Again. He told himself it was normal. Corporate parties ran long. People drank too much. Uber rides got delayed. It wasn't unusual. Still, something about tonight felt stretched, like a silence that lasted a second too long. The sound of keys fumbling at the door broke his thoughts. Nathan turned just as the door swung open, hitting the wall a little harder than necessary. Emily stumbled in. Her heels clicked unevenly against the hardwood floor, and she laughed softly to herself, an airy, careless sound that didn't quite belong in their usually quiet home. "Hey," Nathan said, keeping his tone light. "You okay?" She looked up at him, eyes slightly unfocused but still beautiful in that effortless way she had. Her hair was a little messy, lipstick faded. "Hi," she said, dragging the word like it was heavier than it should be. Nathan walked over, instinctively reaching out to steady her as she kicked off her shoes. "Long night?" "Mm-hmm." She leaned into him for a moment, her weight warm and familiar. "Too many people, too much talking." "And drinking?" he asked, a small smile forming. She laughed again, softer this time. "Maybe." He helped her to the couch. She collapsed into it with a sigh, stretching out like she had no bones left in her body. Nathan moved to the kitchen, grabbing a glass of water. This wasn't new. They'd done this before. Late nights, mild drunkenness, quiet care. It was part of the rhythm of their life. Comfortable, predictable, safe. He handed her the glass. "Drink this." She obeyed without argument, taking a few slow sips before letting her head fall back against the cushion. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The rain filled the space between them. "You should have come tonight," Emily murmured, eyes half closed. Nathan shrugged. "Deadlines. You know how it is." "Yeah," she whispered, though it didn't sound like agreement. He watched her carefully now. There was something in her tone, something faint but unfamiliar. "Did you have fun?" he asked. She hesitated. It was subtle. Most people wouldn't have noticed, but Nathan did. "I guess," she said eventually, "it was fine." Fine. The word lingered in the air like something unfinished. Nathan sat down across from her, studying her face. He'd known Emily for 7 years, married her for 4. He knew her expressions, her pauses, the way her voice shifted when she was hiding something small, like a bad day or a forgotten errand. This felt different. "Who was there?" he asked casually. "Just work people." She waved a hand vaguely. "Marketing team, clients." "No one interesting?" A small smile touched her lips, and for a split second it wasn't for him. "Maybe," she said. Nathan felt it then. Not suspicion, not yet. Just a flicker, like a shadow passing too quickly to name. Emily shifted, curling slightly on her side. Her eyelids grew heavier, her words slower. "I'm tired," she murmured. "Let's get you to bed," Nathan said, standing. He helped her up, guiding her gently down the hallway. She leaned into him again, her head brushing his shoulder. Familiar, so familiar, and yet... They reached the bedroom. Nathan pulled back the covers, helping her lie down. She sighed softly, already drifting. He moved to turn off the light, and that's when she spoke. Soft, slurred, almost not there at all. "I wish..." Nathan paused. Her voice barely carried across the room. "I wish you were more like Daniel." The world didn't stop. There was no dramatic sound, no sudden shift in the air. Just silence. Heavy, unforgiving. Nathan stood there, one hand still on the light switch. He didn't move, didn't breathe. For a moment, he thought he imagined it. "Emily?" he said quietly. No response. She was already asleep. Peaceful, untouched. As if she hadn't just said the one thing that could unravel everything. Nathan turned off the light slowly. The room fell into darkness, broken only by the faint glow of the city outside. He stood there for a long time, staring at nothing. One thought repeating, over and over. Who the hell is Daniel? Morning came too gently for the kind of night Nathan had endured. Sunlight filtered through the sheer curtains, pale and indifferent, stretching across the bedroom floor like nothing had happened. The city was already awake, cars moving, people rushing, life continuing with its usual indifference. Nathan hadn't slept. He sat at the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, staring at the faint crease in the sheets where Emily had been lying just hours ago. She was still asleep behind him, breathing softly, one arm tucked under her pillow. Peaceful, untouched, as if she hadn't said it, as if Daniel didn't exist. Nathan rubbed his hands together slowly, trying to anchor himself in something real, texture, sensation, anything that wasn't that sentence looping in his head. I wish you were more like Daniel. It hadn't been loud, it hadn't been intentional, but it had been honest. That's what terrified him. Drunk words, he thought. People say things they don't mean, except they usually come from somewhere. He stood up quietly, careful not to wake her, and walked into the kitchen. The apartment felt different in the daylight, too open, too exposed, like the walls had thinned overnight. He poured himself coffee he didn't want. The mug sat untouched in his hands as his thoughts began rearranging the past. 7 years with Emily, 4 years married, and nowhere in all that time had she ever mentioned the Daniel. Not a co-worker, not a friend, not even in passing. Nathan exhaled slowly. That wasn't normal. Behind him, he heard movement. Hey, Emily's voice was soft, groggy. Nathan turned. She stood in the doorway, wrapped in an oversized shirt, her hair loose and slightly tangled. She looked ordinary, familiar, like the woman he knew. Morning, he said. She squinted slightly. What time is it? Almost 9. Her eyes widened a little. Shit, I have a call at 10. She moved past him, heading straight for the coffee machine, not noticing or not acknowledging the way he was watching her. Nathan studied her carefully. Was there guilt? Awkwardness? Anything? But she moved through the kitchen like she always did, grabbing a mug, pouring coffee, leaning against the counter. Routine. Unchanged. Which somehow made it worse. You got home late, Nathan said, keeping his tone neutral. Yeah, she took a sip. These things always drag on. He nodded slowly. You seemed pretty out of it. She gave a small laugh. I told you, too many drinks. A pause. Nathan stepped closer, just enough to close the distance slightly. Do you remember everything? Emily frowned faintly, like she was scanning through a fog. Not really, she admitted. Why? There it was, the opening. Nathan felt his chest tighten, but his voice stayed calm. You said something last night. Her expression shifted. Not panic, not yet, but something more subtle. Curiosity. What did I say? Nathan held her gaze. For a moment, he considered letting it go, pretending it never happened, protecting whatever this was, whatever they still had. But the question was already inside him, growing, expanding. I think you mentioned someone, he said carefully. Emily tilted her head slightly. Someone? Yeah, he watched her closely now. Daniel. The name landed between them, not loudly, but heavily. Emily blinked, once, twice, and then she laughed, light, quick, dismissive. Oh my God, she said, shaking her head. I probably mixed up names of something. There were like 100 people there. Nathan didn't smile. Who is he? She shrugged, too casually. No one, Nate, seriously. I don't even remember saying that. No one. The words were simple, clean, too clean. Nathan took a step back, crossing his arms. You said, I wish you were more like Daniel. This time, Emily didn't laugh. The silence stretched, not long, but long enough. That doesn't sound like something I'd say, she replied, her tone quieter now. But you did. Another pause. Emily looked down at her coffee, then back up at him. Okay, she said slowly. Maybe I did, but it doesn't mean anything. Nathan felt something shift in his chest. Not break, not yet, but move. People don't usually compare their husbands to no one, Emily. Her jaw tightened slightly. You're reading too much into it. Am I? Yes. She set her mug down a little harder than necessary. I was drunk. People say stupid things. Nathan studied her. There it was again. Not guilt, not exactly, but defensiveness. And underneath it, something else. Something she wasn't saying. Do you know a Daniel? He asked. Emily hesitated, just a fraction, but it was enough. I mean, probably, she said. It's a common name. Nathan let out a quiet breath. From work? Maybe. She shrugged again, but it felt forced this time. I don't keep track of every person I meet, Nathan. He nodded slowly. Right. The conversation could have ended there. Maybe it should have. But something had already changed. Irreversibly. Nathan walked past her, grabbing his keys from the counter. I've got to get to the office, he said. Okay, she replied, a little too quickly. He paused at the door. For a second, he almost turned back. Almost said something softer, easier. But instead, Emily, he said. She looked up. If it's nothing, then it shouldn't be hard to be honest about it. Her expression flickered, just briefly. I am being honest, she said. Nathan held her gaze for a moment longer. Then he nodded. Yeah, he said quietly. I hope so. And with that, he walked out. The elevator ride down felt longer than usual. Nathan stood alone, hands in his pockets, staring at his reflection in the metal doors. He looked the same suit, same posture, same controlled expression. But inside, something had shifted. Not broken, not yet, but cracked. And cracks had a way of spreading. Upstairs, Emily stood in the kitchen, unmoving. The coffee had gone cold in her hand. Her reflection stared back at her from the dark screen of her phone. For a long moment she said nothing, did nothing. Then, slowly, she unlocked it. Scrolled, paused, and there it was. A name. Daniel. Her thumb hovered over the screen, just for a second, before she locked the phone again. Exhaling softly, like someone trying to convince themselves that silence was still an option. The first thing Nathan learned was this. Suspicion doesn't arrive like a storm. It settles, quietly, patiently, like dust you don't notice until the light hits it just right. 3 days passed after that morning. 3 days of normal conversations, normal routines, normal distance. Emily laughed at the right moments. She asked about his day. She kissed him goodbye before work and texted him reminders about groceries and bills. Everything looked the same. Everything sounded the same, but Nathan had stopped listening to what was said. He started watching. It began with her phone. Emily had never been secretive with it before. It was always there, on the table, on the couch, charging by the bed. Open, casual, unimportant. Now it was different, subtle. She kept it face down more often, took it with her when she left the room, even for a glass of water. The first time Nathan noticed it, they were sitting on the couch together, half watching a show neither of them cared about. Her phone lit up. A message. Just a name on the screen. Too fast for him to read, but not fast enough to miss the way she reacted. She picked it up immediately, too quickly. Her body shifted slightly away from him, just enough to create a private space where there hadn't been one before. Who is it? Nathan asked casually, eyes still on the TV. Work, she said, just as casually. A bit too fast. Nathan nodded, said nothing, but he remembered. The second thing he noticed was time. Emily had always worked late. Occasionally, that wasn't new. Marketing campaigns, deadlines, last-minute client demands. It came with the job. But now, the late nights had a pattern. Not random, not chaotic, structured. Tuesday, Thursday, sometimes Saturday mornings. Big project, she said when he asked. New clients, she added another time. Nathan didn't challenge it, didn't question. He simply filed it away. Patterns mattered. The third thing was harder to define. It wasn't what Emily did, it was what she didn't do anymore. She stopped asking him certain questions, stopped lingering in conversations, stopped looking at him for just a second too long, the way people do when they're fully present. There were no arguments, no fights, just absence, like she had quietly stepped half a foot out of their life, and he was the only one who noticed. On Friday night, Nathan stayed late at the office, not because he had to, but because he needed the space. The law firm was nearly empty by 9 p.m., the usual noise replaced by the low hum of fluorescent lights and distant traffic outside. He sat at his desk, staring at his laptop screen. Emily's name, her company, her team. Public information, simple, harmless. He told himself that. This wasn't spying. It was clarity. He clicked. Employee profiles, LinkedIn pages, company newsletters. Faces and names blurred together until he saw it. Daniel Harper. The name sat there like it had been waiting. Nathan leaned back slightly, his jaw tightening. The profile photo was professional, clean-cut, confident. Early 30s, dark hair. The kind of face that looked easy to trust. Too easy. He read quickly. Former senior strategist. Left the company 2 years ago. Now working at a competing firm. Nathan's eyes scanned every detail, every connection, every overlap. And then, a photo. Old. Buried in a company event archive. Emily stood in the background, half-turned, laughing at something outside the frame. Next to her, Danielle. Closer than colleagues. Not touching, but close enough. Nathan felt it again. That shift. Deeper this time. Later that night, he sat in his car outside their apartment building. The engine was off. The city buzzed quietly around him. His phone rested in his hand, the screen still open to that photo. Emily and Danielle, frozen in a moment that looked effortless. Nathan stared at it for a long time, trying to measure something impossible. What did that look mean? How long had it been there? And why had she never mentioned him? When Nathan finally went upstairs, Emily was already home. The lights were dim, music played softly from the living room. She sat on the couch, legs tucked under her, a glass of wine in her hand. "Hey," she said, smiling. The same smile, familiar, beautiful, distant. "Hey," Nathan replied. He took off his jacket slowly, watching her. "You're home early." She shrugged. "Plans got cancelled." "What plans?" "Just drinks with coworkers." Nathan nodded. "Which ones?" Emily hesitated. There it was again, small, almost invisible. "Just people from the team," she said. "Anyone I know?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "You don't know my coworkers like that, Nate." He walked closer now, stopping just a few feet away. "Do I know Daniel?" The room went still. Emily didn't move, didn't speak. The music continued in the background, soft and out of place. "Where did that come from?" she asked finally. Nathan held her gaze. "I saw his name." A pause. "How?" she asked. "Online." That wasn't a lie, not exactly. Emily set her glass down carefully. "You looked him up?" "I looked you up," Nathan said. "He was there." Another silence. He could feel it now, the tension stretching, pulling tight between them. "Why?" she asked. Nathan let out a quiet breath. "Because you said his name like it meant something." Emily looked away, just for a second, but it was enough. "He used to work with me," she said. "Used to, past tense. Clean, controlled." "That's it?" She nodded. "That's it." Nathan studied her face, every line, every flicker, looking for something that matched the truth he was starting to see. "You were close," he said. It wasn't a question. Emily's jaw tightened slightly. "We work together," she replied. "That's not what I asked." Her eyes met his again, and this time there was something there. Not denial, not fully, but not honesty either. A middle ground, the most dangerous kind. "It was a long time ago," she said quietly. Nathan felt the words settle into him, heavy, incomplete. "How long?" he asked. Emily didn't answer right away. The silence stretched again, thicker now, complicated. "Before us," she said finally. Nathan nodded slowly. "Before us." It should have been reassuring. It should have closed the door. But instead, it opened something else. Because if it was truly over, why did she say his name like that? Why did she hesitate? Why did it still feel present? Nathan stepped back slightly, not in anger, not in defeat, just distance. "Okay," he said. Emily watched him carefully. "You believe me?" she asked. Nathan met her eyes, and for the first time, he didn't know how to answer that. "I want to," he said, and that was the truth. That night, they went to bed at the same time, lying side by side, close, but not touching. Emily fell asleep first. Nathan stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet rhythm of her breathing, and thinking, not about what he knew, but about what he didn't. Because sometimes, the unknown hurts more than the truth. The message came at 2:13 p.m. Emily stared at her phone longer than she should have. "Daniel, I didn't expect to see you last week. Simple, harmless, dangerous." She read it once, then again. Her thumb hovered over the screen, her pulse just slightly uneven, like her body recognized something her mind was still trying to deny. It had been years, that's what she told herself. Years since late nights at the office that turned into longer conversations. Years since laughter that lingered a second too long. Years since you had stood too close to him and didn't step away. Years since she chose Nathan. So why did it feel like no time had passed at all? Emily locked her phone, set it down, picked it up again. Across the city, Nathan sat in a conference room, half listening to a client presentation. Words filled the space, contracts, liabilities, negotiations, but none of it stayed in his head. Instead, his thoughts circled something else. Patterns, timelines, Emily's late nights. The way she had said before us, the hesitation, the almost truth. Nathan wasn't the kind of man who jumped to conclusions. He built cases, carefully, piece by piece. And something about this didn't fit. Not yet. But it would. Emily didn't reply until 3:02 p.m. Emily. It was just a work event. The response was neutral, measured, safe. She waited. 5 minutes, 10. Then Daniel. You look the same. Her breath caught. That was the problem with Daniel. He never said too much. Just enough. Enough to open a door without stepping through it. Emily leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling of her office. The fluorescent lights hummed faintly above her, grounding her in the present. But her mind was already somewhere else. 3 years earlier. The office had been quieter then, or maybe it just felt that way. Emily had been new, eager, sharp, trying to prove herself in a room full of people who already belonged. Daniel had noticed her before anyone else did. You don't belong here, he said once, leaning casually against her desk. She looked up, confused. Excuse me? He smiled. You're too good for this place. It wasn't flirtation, not exactly. It was recognition, and that was more dangerous. Back in the present, Emily swallowed slowly. Her phone buzzed again. Daniel. Coffee? Just one word, no pressure, no explanation. The kind of invitation that pretended to be nothing. Emily closed her eyes for a moment. She could say no. She should say no. But instead, she typed, paused, deleted, typed again. Nathan noticed the change before he understood it. It was small, almost invisible, but it was there. Emily smiled at her phone more. Not often, not obviously, but enough. And when she did, she looked lighter. That was the part that bothered him the most. Not guilt, not secrecy, but something closer to happiness. A version of her he hadn't seen in a long time. Hey, Nathan said one evening as they stood in the kitchen. Emily turned toward him, distracted. Yeah? You've been busy lately? She nodded. Work's been crazy. More than usual? A pause. Yeah, she said. Big campaign coming up? Nathan watched her carefully. Does it involve Daniel? The question landed softer this time, but deeper. Emily froze for just a fraction of a second. Then she exhaled. I ran into him again, she admitted. Nathan's chest tightened. Again? At another event, she said quickly. It's not a big deal, Nate. Isn't it? She met his eyes, a flicker of something defensive rising. He used to be part of my life. That doesn't make him a threat. Nathan didn't respond immediately, because the problem wasn't what she said, it was what she didn't. Flashback. It had never been official. That was the story they both told. Emily and Daniel. No labels, no boundaries, just late nights that turned into something neither of them named. You're going to leave eventually, Daniel said once, sitting across from her in a quiet bar. Emily smiled faintly. So are you? Yeah, he said, but not like you. She tilted her head. What does that mean? It means you're the kind of person who wants something real. And you're not? Daniel held her gaze. I don't think I'm the kind of person people stay with. Emily didn't argue, because deep down she believed him. Back in the present, Emily stood alone in a cafe downtown. She had told herself she wouldn't come, told herself it was a bad idea, told herself it meant nothing, and yet, here she was. Daniel was already there, of course he was, sitting by the window exactly like she remembered. Some things didn't change. He looked up as she approached, and for a moment everything else disappeared. Hey, he said. Emily forced a small smile. Hey. She sat down across from him, placing her bag carefully on the chair beside her. There was a pause. Not awkward, just loaded. You look good, Daniel said. Emily exhaled softly. You said that already. I meant it. She looked away briefly, her fingers tightening around her coffee cup. This is a bad idea, she said. Probably. But you still asked. And you still came. Emily met his eyes again. There it was, that pull. Familiar, unfinished. We shouldn't do this, she whispered. Daniel leaned back slightly, studying her. I didn't ask you to do anything. That's the problem, she said. A small smile touched his lips. You always needed things to be defined, he said. And you never did. That's why it worked. Emily shook her head. That's why it didn't. Silence settled between them. Heavy, real. Daniel spoke first. Are you happy? He asked. The question hit harder than it should have. Emily hesitated. And that hesitation said everything. That night, Emily came home late. Again. Nathan was waiting. Not in anger, not in confrontation. Just there. Sitting in the living room, the lights dim, the air quiet. You saw him, Nathan said. It wasn't a question. Emily stopped in the doorway. Yes. The honesty was new, sharp, unexpected. Nathan nodded slowly. And? Emily set her back down carefully. It was just coffee. Nathan let out a quiet breath. Nothing is ever just anything with you right now, Emily. She looked at him, something fragile flickering beneath her composure. I don't know what you want me to say. The truth, he replied. She held his gaze, and for a moment it looked like she might actually give it to him. But instead, I don't know what there is anymore, she said. Nathan felt something inside him shift again. Deeper this time. Not anger, not yet, but something closer to inevitability. Because the past wasn't past. It was here, sitting between them, breathing, waiting. And for the first time, Nathan realized something terrifying. He wasn't competing with another man. He was competing with a version of his wife that still existed somewhere else. There are lies you tell other people, and then there are the ones you tell yourself. Quietly, repeatedly, until they start to feel like truth. Emily had become fluent in both. It started with small adjustments. A meeting that ran a little late, a client call that couldn't be rescheduled, a dinner she forgot to mention. Each excuse was simple, plausible, easy to deliver without hesitation. And Nathan didn't argue. That was what made it worse. He didn't raise his voice, didn't demand answers, didn't check her phone or follow her out the door. He just watched, listened, waited. Like a man gathering evidence he wasn't ready to present. On Tuesday evening, Emily stood in front of the mirror longer than usual. Not because she wanted to impress. That's what she told herself. It was just habit. She adjusted her blouse slightly, smoothing the fabric over her waist, then paused. Her reflection stared back at her, composed, controlled, familiar, but her eyes looked different, alive in a way she hadn't noticed before. And that realization brought something else with it. Guilt. Sharp. Immediate. She closed her eyes briefly. This is nothing, she whispered under her breath. Just coffee. Just conversation. Just closure. That's what she had decided. That's what she needed it to be. Daniel was already waiting. Again. Same table. Same quiet confidence. Same unsettling sense that nothing between them had ever truly ended. You're late, he said lightly. Work, Emily replied, sitting down without meeting his eyes. Daniel smiled faintly. You always say that. She looked up at him then. And you always show up early. Some things don't change. The words lingered. Neither of them rushed to fill the silence. That was always how it had been. Never forced, never desperate. Just inevitable. Across the city, Nathan sat alone at the dining table, dinner untouched. The clock ticked softly on the wall, each second stretching a little longer than the last. 7:42 p.m. Emily had texted an hour ago. Running late, don't wait up. Nathan stared at the message again, then locked his phone, then unlocked it. Not to check her location, not to call, just to look. As if staring at the words long enough might change them. Back at the cafe, Emily exhaled slowly. This has to stop, she said. Daniel tilted his head slightly. Then stop. It's not that simple. It is, he replied. You're just making it complicated. Emily shook her head, frustration flickering across her face. You don't understand. Daniel leaned forward slightly. No, he said quietly. I think I do. She met his gaze. And just like that, she felt it again. That pull, that dangerous familiar gravity. You were never good at choosing, Daniel continued. You just drifted into whatever felt right at the time. That's not fair, she said. Isn't it? Emily looked away, because part of her knew he wasn't entirely wrong. Flashback. The night everything almost happened. Emily and Daniel had stayed late at the office, finishing a campaign that didn't actually need to be finished that night. The building was nearly empty. The city outside blurred into soft lights and distant movement. You should go home, Emily said, not moving. So should you, Daniel replied, also not moving. A pause. Longer this time. Loaded. You're going to regret this, she whispered. I regret a lot of things, he said. This won't be one of them. Emily looked at him then, really looked, and for a moment she almost closed the distance. Almost. But instead she stepped back, and the moment passed. Unfinished. Suspended in time. Back in the present, Emily's fingers tightened around her cup. That night, she said softly, Daniel didn't need her to finish. I remember, he said. Nothing happened. No, he agreed. But it could have. Emily swallowed. That doesn't matter anymore. Daniel studied her carefully. Then why are you here? The question landed harder this time. Because there was no easy answer. At home, Nathan finally stood up from the table. The food had gone cold. The silence had grown too loud. He walked into the living room, then stopped. Emily's jacket was draped over the chair. Careless, familiar. Nathan reached into the pocket before he could stop himself. Not out of habit, not out of trust, but something else. Something he didn't fully recognize in himself yet. His fingers brushed against her phone. For a moment, he froze. This was the line. The one he hadn't crossed. The one that separated suspicion from action. He pulled his hand back. Then, after a long pause, reached in again. Back at the cafe, Emily leaned back, exhaling slowly. I'm married, she said. I know. I have a life. I know that too. Then why are you doing this? Daniel didn't answer right away. He just looked at her. Calm, certain. Because you're here, he said. Emily's chest tightened. That's not enough. It is for me. She shook her head. It shouldn't be. Then leave, he said simply. The words were soft, but absolute. Emily didn't move. Nathan sat on the couch, Emily's phone in his hand. The screen was dark. Locked. For a moment, he thought that was it. That he wouldn't go further. That this was already too much. But then, the screen lit up. A notification. A name. Daniel. Nathan's breath stilled. The message preview appeared for just a second. You don't have to pretend with me. The screen went dark again, but it was too late. Nathan had seen it, and something inside him finally broke. The door opened at 9:16 p.m. Emily stepped inside, her movement slower now, heavier. She knew, before she even saw him. Nathan was sitting in the living room, still, silent. Her phone rested on the table in front of him. The air between them felt different. Not tense, not loud, just final. You went through my phone, she said quietly. Nathan looked at her, and for the first time, there was no hesitation in his voice. No, he said. A beat. It came to me. Emily's chest tightened. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Then, is it him? Nathan asked. Emily closed her eyes briefly, and when she opened them, there was no denial left. Yes. The word hung in the air, heavy, irreversible. Nathan nodded slowly, not in understanding, not in acceptance, but in recognition, because the truth finally had a shape. You said nothing happened, he said. Emily's voice trembled just slightly. It didn't. Nathan held her gaze. Not physically? She hesitated, and that hesitation was louder than any confession. I don't know what I'm doing, she whispered, and for the first time it sounded like the truth. Nathan leaned back slightly, his expression unreadable. That's the problem, he said quietly. You are. Two lives, two versions of love, two different truths, and somewhere in between, a line that had already been crossed, whether she admitted it or not. There's a moment quiet, almost invisible, when denial stops working. Not because the truth suddenly becomes louder, but because it becomes impossible to ignore. Nathan didn't confront her the next morning. That was the first thing Emily noticed. No questions, no accusations, no raised voice cutting through the fragile silence of the apartment. Just absence. He moved through the space like a stranger who knew exactly where everything was, but no longer belonged to it. Coffee made, suit pressed, keys picked up, routine, perfectly intact. Except for the part where he didn't look at her. "Are you going to say something?" Emily asked finally, standing near the kitchen counter. Nathan adjusted his watch without meeting her eyes. Not yet. The words were calm, measured, and somehow worse than anger. Emily swallowed. "What does that mean?" "It means," he said, finally glancing at her, "I'd rather understand everything before I hear another version of it." The sentence landed with surgical precision. Emily felt it, because she knew he wasn't guessing anymore. He was building something. At the office, Nathan closed the door behind him and sat down slowly. His desk was spotless. His mind wasn't. He opened his laptop, not to work, not today. Instead, he pulled up everything he had already found. Emily's company, old employee directories, archive photos, Daniel Harper. But this time, he went further. Emails, connections, digital traces that people assume would stay buried under time and irrelevance. Nathan didn't rush. He never did. He followed patterns, and patterns always led somewhere. The first thing he found was timing. Daniel had left Emily's company 2 years ago, 6 months after she married Nathan. Nathan stared at the dates longer than necessary. 6 months. Not before, not long after. Just enough time to matter. The second thing was harder to ignore. A shared project. Long term. High priority. Emily and Daniel listed together across multiple campaign reports. Late nights. Travel records. Conferences in other cities. Nathan leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. This wasn't random. This wasn't casual. This was sustained. Meanwhile, across the city, Emily sat in her car outside Daniel's apartment. She hadn't planned to come. That was the truth. But plans didn't seem to matter anymore. Her hands rested on the steering wheel, unmoving. Her reflection stared back at her from the dark windshield. Tired, conflicted, unrecognizable. "This has to stop," she whispered again. But the words didn't carry weight anymore. They felt rehearsed, empty. Because if she truly meant them, she wouldn't be here. Her phone buzzed. "Daniel, you're outside, aren't you?" Emily's breath caught. She hadn't told him, hadn't texted, and yet he knew. A second later, the building door opened. Daniel stepped out, casual, unsurprised, like this moment had already existed in his mind before it ever happened. He walked toward her car slowly. Emily didn't move, didn't leave, didn't roll the window down. She just watched him, and that was enough. Nathan clicked on another file, an archived email thread, old, nearly forgotten, but not gone. He scanned quickly, then stopped, read again, slower this time. A message from Daniel, late, personal, not inappropriate on the surface, but not professional either. "You don't have to pretend with me." Nathan's jaw tightened. The same sentence, the same tone. Years apart, unchanged. Back in the car, Daniel stood outside Emily's window, waiting. Not knocking, not pushing, just there. Emily finally rolled the window down slightly. "This is a mistake," she said. Daniel nodded once. "Probably. Then why does it feel like the opposite?" He didn't answer immediately. He leaned down slightly, meeting her eyes. "Because you never finished it," he said. The words cut deeper than she expected. Emily looked away. "That doesn't mean we should start now. It means it never ended." Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. Nathan leaned forward, elbows on the desk. His hands clasped tightly together. Everything was starting to align now. Not perfectly, but enough. Enough to see the shape of it, the timeline, the connection, the unfinished history, and the present bleeding into it. That evening, the apartment felt smaller, like the walls had shifted inward, closing the space between truth and confrontation. Emily walked in first, her steps slower than usual, measured. Nathan was already there. Of course he was, sitting in the same spot, waiting. But this time, there was something different in the air. Not uncertainty, not suspicion, certainty. "We need to talk," Emily said. Nathan looked up. A long pause followed. Then, "No," he said. The word surprised her. "What?" "I think you've said enough," he continued calmly. Emily felt her chest tighten. "That's not fair." Nathan stood up slowly. For the first time in days, he walked toward her, closing the distance, not aggressively, not emotionally, but deliberately. "You're right," he said. "It's not." He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out his phone, set it on the table between them. "I found him," Nathan said. Emily didn't move. "I know when he left," he continued. "I know how long you worked together. I know about the trips, the late nights." Each word landed heavier than the last. Emily's eyes filled, but she didn't look away. "I didn't," she started. Nathan raised his hand slightly, not to silence her, but to stop the lie before it formed. "Don't," he said quietly. The room went still, because this wasn't a conversation anymore. This was the end of pretending. "I need you to answer one thing," Nathan said. Emily nodded slowly, her voice barely there. "Okay." Nathan held her gaze. No anger, no desperation, just truth. "Did you love him?" The question cut through everything else. Not about cheating, not about betrayal, something deeper. Emily's breath trembled. Her mind searched for the safest answer, the least damaging version of the truth. But there wasn't one. Not anymore. "I don't know," she whispered. And somehow, that was worse than yes. Nathan closed his eyes briefly. Not in pain, but in understanding. Because that answer meant one thing. She hadn't chosen. Not then, not now. "I can't do this halfway," Nathan said softly. Emily stepped forward instinctively. "I'm trying." "No," he interrupted gently. "You're not." The words didn't carry anger, just clarity, and that made them impossible to argue with. Two lives, two truths, colliding. And for the first time, neither of them could pretend they weren't already standing in the ruins. Nathan stepped back. Distance. Final. "We're past the point where this is just confusion," he said. Emily's voice broke. "Then what is it?" Nathan looked at her one last time. And this time, there was no hesitation. "It's a choice," he said. And for the first time, Emily realized something terrifying. Soon, she wouldn't be able to keep both. There are truths that destroy slowly, and then there are truths that arrive all at once, clean, sharp, irreversible. Nathan didn't raise his voice. That was the first thing Emily noticed. No anger, no shouting, no accusations thrown like weapons across the room. Just silence. Heavy, deliberate, final. It was late when it happened. The city outside buzzed with distant noise. Sirens, passing cars, fragments of other lives continuing as if nothing had changed. Inside the apartment, everything felt suspended. Nathan stood by the window, his back to her. Emily lingered near the doorway, unsure whether to step closer or stay exactly where she was. "I can't keep guessing," Nathan said finally. His voice was calm, too calm. Emily swallowed. "I know." He turned slowly. There was something different in his eyes now. Not confusion, not even pain. Clarity. "I'm going to ask you again," he said. "And I need the truth. Not the version that protects you. Not the version that protects me. Just the truth." Emily nodded, though her chest was already tightening. Nathan took a step forward. "Was it just emotional?" he asked. The question hung in the air. Simple, direct. Emily closed her eyes briefly. "No," she said. The word landed quietly, but it changed everything. Nathan didn't react immediately, didn't flinch, didn't look away. "When?" he asked. Her voice felt fragile now. "Before we got married," she said, "and after." A pause. "Not recently," she added quickly, "but it didn't just happen once." Nathan nodded slowly, processing, absorbing, each word like a piece falling into place. "How long?" he asked. Emily hesitated, and that hesitation still mattered. "A few months," she said, "on and off." Nathan let out a slow breath. Not disbelief, not shock, just confirmation. "You said it was over," he said. "It was," Emily replied quickly. "It is." Nathan tilted his head slightly. "Then why does it feel like it never ended?" Emily didn't answer. Because she couldn't. The silence stretched between them again. But this time it wasn't empty. It was full of everything they hadn't said for years. Nathan stepped closer, close enough now that she could see the shift in his expression. Not anger, something deeper. You didn't just cheat, he said quietly. Emily flinched. I know. No, he interrupted softly. That's not the worst part. She looked at him, confusion flickering through the fear. What do you mean? Nathan held her gaze, unwavering. You compared me to him. Emily's breath caught. The words hit harder than she expected, because they were true, and she knew. He knew. At first, I thought it was just that night, Nathan continued. Something you said without thinking. Emily's eyes filled with tears. Nathan, but it wasn't, was it? His voice didn't rise, didn't break. It stayed steady. And that made it impossible to escape. Emily shook her head slightly, panic creeping in. I didn't mean it like that. Yes, you did. The words were quiet, but absolute. Nathan stepped even closer now. Not aggressive, but unrelenting. How long? He asked again. Emily's voice trembled. I don't know. Yes, you do. The room felt smaller, tighter, like the truth itself was closing in. Emily looked away, because she couldn't hold his gaze anymore, because saying it out loud would make it real, permanent. But Nathan didn't look away. He waited, and that was worse. Since before we got married, she whispered. The words barely made it out, but they were enough. Nathan's chest rose slowly, then fell. No visible reaction, no immediate collapse. Just stillness. You married me, he said. It wasn't a question. Emily nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks now. Yes, and all that time, Nathan continued, you were measuring me against someone else. Emily's voice broke. I didn't want to, but you did. She nodded again, because there was no point denying it anymore. It wasn't constant, she said quickly. It wasn't like that every day. But it was there, Nathan said. Emily closed her eyes. Yes. Silence. Heavy. Unforgiving. Nathan turned away for a moment, running a hand through his hair. For the first time, there was a crack. Not in his voice, but in something deeper. Do you know what that does to someone? He asked quietly, still facing away. Emily didn't answer. She couldn't. It means I was never enough, he said. The words weren't loud, but they carried weight. Years of it. That's not true, Emily said immediately, stepping toward him. It is, Nathan replied, turning back to face her. His eyes were steady again, but now there was something else there. Not anger, not sadness, something colder. You didn't just choose him once, he said. You kept choosing him, in your head, in your expectations, in the way you looked at me, and so something missing. Emily shook her head desperately. I chose you, she said. Nathan had her gaze. No, he said quietly. You settled for me. The words landed harder than anything else, because they weren't cruel, they were precise. Emily's knees felt weak. That's not fair, she whispered. Nathan exhaled slowly. No, he said, it's not. A pause. But it's true. Tears streamed down her face now. I loved you, she said. Nathan didn't respond right away, because that sentence, past tense, didn't go unnoticed. Did? He repeated softly. Emily froze. The realization hit her too late. I do, Nathan shook his head slightly. You don't even hear yourself anymore. The room fell into silence again, but this time it felt final. Nathan stepped back, creating distance, real distance. I think I understand now, he said. Emily looked at him, panic rising. Understand what? Nathan met her eyes one last time. That it was never just about him. A beat. It was about you not knowing how to be satisfied with what you had. Emily's voice broke completely. I was trying, no, Nathan said gently. You were comparing. That was the truth. The one thing she couldn't undo. The one thing that couldn't be explained away. Nathan walked past her, not in anger, not in defeat, but with something far heavier. Acceptance. Emily turned quickly. Nathan, please, he stopped, but didn't turn around. What happens now? She asked, her voice barely holding together. A long pause followed, the longest one yet, and then Nathan answered, quietly, without hesitation. Now, he said, I stopped competing with a ghost. The words settled into the room like something permanent, unmovable. Emily stood there, frozen, because for the first time she understood something she hadn't allowed herself to see before. This wasn't about losing Daniel. It was about losing Nathan, and this time, There would be no comparison left to make. In the end, it didn't happen all at once. There was no dramatic exit, no shouting, no slammed doors echoing through the hallway. Just distance. Quiet. Deliberate. Final. Nathan didn't leave that night. He slept on the couch. Not out of hesitation, but because some endings deserve a moment of stillness before they fully arrive. Emily lay awake in the bedroom, staring at the ceiling, her body rigid, her mind louder than it had ever been. For years, she had lived between two versions of herself, the one who chose stability and the one who chased something she couldn't define. Now, there was no space left between them, only consequences. Morning came too soon. The sunlight felt intrusive this time, sharp, exposing, unforgiving. Emily found Nathan in the kitchen. Same routine, same posture, coffee in hand, but something fundamental had shifted. He didn't belong here anymore. "Did you sleep?" she asked quietly. Nathan shook his head once. "Not really." A pause. "I think we should talk about... I already know," he said gently. Emily stopped. "What do you mean?" Nathan set his cup down. "I mean, there's nothing left to figure out." The calm in his voice was more painful than anger could have been. He walked past her toward the bedroom. Emily followed instinctively, her chest tightening with every step. "What are you doing?" she asked. Nathan opened the closet, reached for a suitcase. "I'm leaving." The words didn't come with hesitation or emotion, just truth. Emily felt the ground shift beneath her. "You don't have to do that," she said quickly. "We can fix this." Nathan paused for a moment, not turning around. "Fix what?" She struggled to answer. "Everything, anything, this, us," she said. Nathan let out a quiet breath and finally turned to face her. "There is no us," he said. The words landed harder than anything that had come before, because this time there was no anger behind them, no heat, no fight left, just absence. "I made a mistake," Emily said, her voice breaking. "I know I did." Nathan nodded slowly. "I believe you." Her eyes filled with a fragile kind of hope. Then, "But it wasn't one mistake," he continued. And just like that, the hope disappeared. "It was a pattern," he said. "A choice you kept making, even when you weren't with him." Emily shook her head, tears falling freely now. "I didn't understand what I was doing, that's the problem," Nathan replied softly. "You didn't want to." Silence filled the space between them. But this silence was different. It didn't feel like something waiting to be resolved. It felt like something already decided. Nathan zipped the suitcase slowly. The sound was final, sharp, unmistakable. "Where will you go?" Emily asked, her voice barely holding together. "Somewhere else," he said simply. She stepped closer, desperate now. "Nathan, please, don't do this like it's nothing." That made him pause, just for a second. Then he looked at her, and for the first time there was something in his eyes again. Not anger, not love, something quieter. Sadness. "It's not nothing," he said. "A beat. It's everything." Emily's breath caught, because she understood what he meant. This wasn't him walking away easily. This was him walking away because it mattered. "I loved you," she whispered. The words came too late. Even she could hear it. Nathan nodded once. "I know." A pause. "And I loved you enough not to stay where I'm being compared to someone else." Emily's knees felt weak. "I can change," she said. Nathan didn't argue, didn't dismiss it. He just looked at her, really looked this time, as if memorizing something that no longer belonged to him. "Maybe you can," he said, a soft breath. "But I'm not the person you get to prove that to." That was it, the line that couldn't be crossed again. Nathan picked up his suitcase, walked toward the door. Emily followed, her heart racing, her thoughts unraveling. "Is this really it?" she asked. Nathan stopped at the threshold, his hand resting on the door. For a moment, time seemed to hesitate. "Yes," he said. No hesitation, no uncertainty, just truth. The door opened. The hallway beyond felt colder than it should have. Empty, echoing. Nathan stepped out, then paused, not turning around. "Emily," he said. Her breath caught. "Yes?" A long silence followed, and for a moment she thought he might say something different, something that would change everything. But instead, "I hope one day you understand what you were looking for," he said, a beat, and why it was never going to be enough. Then he walked away. The door closed quietly behind him. No sound, no impact. Just absence. Emily stood there for a long time, not moving, not thinking, just existing in the space he had left behind. The apartment felt different now. Not quieter, not emptier, but exposed. Like everything that had once been hidden was now visible. Every choice, every moment, every comparison she thought no one would ever know. She walked slowly back into the living room, sat down on the couch. The same place they had shared countless nights. Laughter, conversations, silences that once felt comfortable. Now, there was nothing left to fill them. Her phone rested on the table. The screen lit up. A message. Daniel, are you okay? Emily stared at it. For a long time. Longer than she ever had before. Then, slowly, she picked up the phone, read the message again, and for the first time, it didn't feel the same. There was no pull, no curiosity, no sense of unfinished business. Just distance. Because now she understood something she hadn't before. Daniel was never the answer. He was just a question she kept running back to. And Nathan had been the life she never fully chose. Her fingers hovered over the screen. Then she turned it off, placed the phone down, and let the silence stay. Not because it was comfortable, but because it was honest. Outside, the city moved on, unaware, unchanged. Inside, Emily sat alone, finally facing something she had avoided for years. Not who she loved, but who she had been while loving them. And for the first time, there was no one left to compare, no one left to choose, only herself and the weight of what remained.